All right, our next poem is The Fearful by Sylvia Plath. And this one sort of relates to the last one that we did in the sense that it's about a pregnancy, but it's not about Plath's pregnancy. It's about the pregnancy of the woman who was having an affair with her husband. So it begins, this man makes a pseudonym and crawls behind it like a worm. And when she introduced this man, she's obviously in reference to her husband, but the whole poem kind of has this detached sort of feeling about it. It's as if she knows what's going on between her husband and this woman, and she calls her this woman. But the fact that she doesn't give them names, it's like she almost sees herself as above this situation. So she's detaching herself from the poem, like much as she detaches herself from her husband now that she knows that this is going on. And crawls behind it like a worm. That sort of implies, crawling, something that's what you do on your hands and knees, and a worm is a spineless animal. She's really giving a negative image of her husband and this man, as she calls him. And this is the woman on the telephone says she is a man, not a woman. And by making her on the telephone, it implies sort of like a mystery, no face, no name. And it says she is a man, not a woman. And we later come to find out that this woman doesn't want the responsibilities of a woman. She'd rather be irresponsible and carefree like a man, which is Plath's own way of sort of painting a negative image of men in general.
Yeah.
Let's see. We could talk about the title, The Fearful. The Fearful is in reference to being afraid to be who you are, and like this woman is afraid to take ownership of her female characteristics, and that's why she sort of lives in fear of that. Which I guess do you want to talk about that? The voice of the woman hollows, which we decided was the fulcrum of the poem, where she stops, being carefree and acting like a man when she starts to realize the magnitude of what it means to be a woman.
Yeah, I guess kind of the overall view of this poem was really how like it's all fun and games until something bad happens, and like the consequences that you have to deal with when you fool around. And I guess the woman is a woman up until she faces the fact that she's pregnant, and she no longer wants to take that responsibility. And I guess that Plath kind of like relates this whole thing to the whole negative connotation of a man, and how men can fool around and not rarely deal with consequences whenever they're having affairs or dealing with women, where women aren't so
I don't know, they're not so carefree.
Yeah.
They have responsibilities, and they have to deal with the consequences of those responsibilities, like having a baby. A man can have an affair and not worry about that, but the woman has to deal with what happens afterwards. And
the woman seems to be completely in love with herself. Like, she's very vain. The thought of a baby, the stealer of cells and the stealer of beauty, she would rather be dead than fat. So this woman wants to take wants to have all the benefits of being a woman and being with a man up until the thought of making a child. And with that, she would much rather be dead than have this baby and have people look at her differently than they would if she wasn't pregnant.
And like the fulcrum, that the point where everything changes, it says the voice of the woman hollows more and more like a dead one. And it's almost like the woman within her has died, the womanly responsibility, everything that she carries with that is not there. It's gone. She doesn't see it that way at all. She would rather be dead than face the consequences physically of being pregnant. And like Erin said, she would rather, she wants to have all the womanly virtue and the womanly beauty, but she doesn't want to have womanly responsibility, which is something that a man would do, want to give up the responsibility of, dealing with what comes afterwards. And it's, she hates the thought of the baby. And it says she'd rather be dead than fat, dead and perfect, like Nefertiti, which is, Nefertiti was the queen of Egypt, pre-Cleopatra. And she was just like legendary for her beauty, and a lot of like modern makeup and style is modeled after what things that she would wear and the way that she presented herself. And she vanished from history kind of suddenly. It was almost like she disappeared, and that's what this woman wants to do essentially, is disappear and not have to deal with this responsibility and not have to carry the weight of having a child on her shoulders. So, and she says that the baby's a stealer of cells and a stealer of beauty, and this is an anaphora, the way she repeats it this way, and she's kind of syntactically, she's setting these two elements as equal to one another, like, the cells are the beauty, and it's like, what she carries inside her is her genetic code is what makes her beautiful, and by giving it to someone else, she's sacrificing her beauty, which she doesn't want to do.
Hearing the fierce mask magnify, I guess, is like how Plath is hearing this woman on the telephone and hearing the fierce mask, and the fierce mask would be, I guess, the facade that I guess Plath maybe might not want to completely identify and might not want to hear anything about it. So hearing that this woman would be pregnant, almost it like kills, I guess, this man's identity to Plath. The man may ultimately be dead to her now that he has been fooling around and is multiplying, is having a child with this woman.
And she notes, like in the very beginning, that he crawls behind his identity. He crawls behind his affair like a worm. Like the worm is the man that he actually is, the spineless little, shroud of a man, really. And then the mask is the affair. It's what he hides behind. He creates this alter ego. He creates this alternate universe in which he's happy with this woman and he's unhappy at home with Plath, with whom at this point he has multiple children, I believe. Mm-hmm. So, and the fact that this woman is so unwilling to have children and is so just thinks it's like, she's in hatred of having a baby. It kind of infuriates Plath, who eventually has some miscarriage, has troubles having children. And she makes them out to both of them to be cowards because she sees herself as sort of like not a hero, but like a heroic, a woman. She sees herself as having all of the characteristics of what a woman really is, and strength and determination and, willing to take on the responsibility of being a mother, which she loved. I mean, she loved being pregnant and she loved having children. But this woman who doesn't, she makes her out to be lesser, like less of a person. And she equates her with a man because she sees men as less than women, evidently through her poem. And just through the way that she describes her husband like a worm and how he crawls behind a facade of his affair. And at the very end, the last two couplets are hearing the fierce mask magnify the silver limbo of each eye. So it's almost like hearing the images or seeing images and hearing the words associated with what's going on in like his and her, the couple that's having the affair, like their mind's eye almost. It's like seeing what their intentions are and what their opinions are about this, where the child can never swim, where there is only him and him. And she's just saying that life cannot exist. There is no future for this child in a relationship where there are two men. Someone has to be the woman, and the woman in the relationship refuses to be. So she can't exist this way. The child can't exist that way. And this kind of lowers the status of men because no life can thrive in a world of men, and because they don't want the responsibility of caring for life and making it grow. So we decided that the meaning of the poem in general was kind of Plath's way of cleverly detaching herself from her personal situation with this affair and kind of making a comment on that. But the message of the poem, about the human condition and about human nature is that men tend to be less responsible, and that, being afraid and living in fear of being who you are, as a woman trying, to shed that responsibility of being a woman is selfish and irresponsible. And Plath finds these traits typically possessed by men or people with masculine qualities, and that's what she's trying to make a point of in this poem, The Fearful.